If you're in the market for a new iPad, which of the 5 different models should you choose? Earlier this year, Apple updated the 11-inch and the 12.9-inch iPad Pro. And just this week, we've seen the new 8th generation iPad and now a new iPad Air, which looks very similar to the 11-inch iPad Pro. And of course, there's also the iPad mini, which was updated last year. So let's take a look at some of the different factors that might affect your buying decisions and show how the different models weigh in. So we're going to cover the specs and the pricing at the end of the video. I think this data could be overwhelming if you're not technical or if you're new to the iPad. So instead, let's have a look at some of the things that might help you to narrow down your selection, starting with size. Now, if you are looking for the smallest and the lightest iPad, then you'd naturally look to the iPad mini. It's got a 7.9-inch Retina display with True Tone. Now, if you're new to iPad, I'll just explain these terms. Retina is Apple's name for a very high-resolution display. Text is sharp, images are detailed, and True Tone is an automatic white balance feature that changes the color temperature of the display based on the lighting around you. It's clever stuff. It's not just the screen size though that makes the iPad mini small. It's really thin as well, and it doesn't have a protruding camera lens. Now, of course, most people will put their iPad in a case, and once you do that, it's just as chunky as all the others. Now, should you be concerned by the fact that the iPad mini didn't get an update this year? I don't think so. It's already got the A12 Bionic chip, and when it was released last year, it became the fastest non-Pro iPad. So it's still got plenty of performance to stand its ground in this new lineup. What if a small device doesn't appeal to you? What if you want the biggest screen available? Well, in that case, you've got to go straight to the top of the range for the 12.9-inch iPad Pro. Or perhaps like me, you want that big screen for some things, but you prefer a smaller device in other situations. And I'm fortunate because since my business provides me with this iPad Pro, I was able then to buy a mini personally to enjoy the best of both worlds. A bit excessive perhaps, but I'm sure there will be others who are in a similar position. Let's come back to performance. What if your main decision-making factor is that you want the very best possible performance in an iPad? Well, whilst all of the iPads offer excellent performance, if you want the fastest, you'll be looking at either of the iPad Pro models, or perhaps the new iPad Air, which we should state isn't available until October. The new iPad Air features Apple's A14 Bionic chip, and whilst we haven't got one to test yet, it's pretty safe to conclude that it will have excellent performance. It will be faster than the iPad Pro models for single-threaded tasks, and the iPad Pro with its A12Z or Z Bionic will likely take the lead for multi-threaded tasks. These chip names that Apple uses are shared across iPad and iPhone models, but just because two devices have a chip with the same name, it doesn't mean that they have the same chip. I realise this is confusing, but the naming increments every year. The A12 was released 2 years ago. A13, as seen in the iPhones, well, that was last year. And A14 is this year's chip. The X and Z or Z versions of these chips have got additional cores and additional memory, and they feature only in the iPad Pro. So the current iPad Pro does have the A12 from 2 years ago, but since this is the Z or Z version, it has more cores and more performance. The iPad Air has this year's chip, and although it isn't one of these enhanced Pro chips, it does have 2 years additional performance improvements. And this includes a move to a 5nm fabrication process. We don't want to get too technical in this buying guide, but what this basically means is the transistors are smaller, so you can fit more in the same chip, and that translates, in this case, to better efficiency and better performance. The 8th generation standard iPad and the iPad mini both have the standard A12 Bionic chip. So, if you want the best in performance, it's the iPad Pro or the new iPad Air. Now, what if you want an iPad mainly for gaming? Well, again, it's the iPad Pro models and the new iPad Air that offer the best graphics performance. But I'd say the iPad Air would probably be a strong contender for your hard-earned cash in this area. The display is well matched to the potential performance of this iPad, and based on the brief demos that Apple showed at their event, games can look really good. To my eye, at least, it looked easily as good as a previous generation games console. Now, what if you simply want an iPad for content consumption? Things like browsing the internet and watching YouTube or movies on your iPad. Any of the iPads will be brilliant at this task, but there are some things to be aware of. The iPad mini's screen real estate is just a little too small to allow for a full desktop experience when browsing the web, and the larger screens of the other iPads may be better suited to that. And for watching video content, if you're using headphones, the audio is great on all of them. But if you're using the inbuilt speakers in the iPad, then it's either of the iPad Pro models or probably the iPad Air that's going to fit the bill here. These top three models have 4 speakers so that you get stereo sound whether you hold it in portrait or landscape mode. The standard iPad and the iPad mini have 2 speakers below the home button, so if you hold it in landscape mode for widescreen viewing, the sound is off to one side. Now, speaking of audio, what if you want to use your iPad to listen to music? Now again, the entire range is great for this task, but it's only the standard iPad and the iPad mini that have the 3.5mm headphone jack. With the others, you'll need to buy an adapter. And I know that's a deal breaker for some audio purists, so it's worth bearing in mind. What if you're mainly buying the iPad to use Apple Pencil? Now, all of the iPad range supports Pencil. For the standard iPad and the iPad mini, it's Apple Pencil Generation 1. For the new Air and Pro models, it's Generation 2. Now, the first generation needs to be charged either by a lightning cable using the included adapter, which is very small and very easy to lose, or by simply sticking your pencil into your iPad, which is not an aesthetically pleasing solution. Fortunately, it does charge very quickly. The second generation pencil, on the other hand, attaches magnetically to the iPad and it charges wirelessly, so it's always ready to use. Now, I do find that with my mini and the first generation pencil that the battery's often depleted when I come to use it, so I find I have to charge it for a few minutes first, and that can be an irritation. Both pencils are great to use, they're comfortable, they're accurate. I think the second generation has the edge here, but it's a slight improvement, not night and day. And the second generation pencil also has a capacitive touch feature where you can tap the pencil twice to enter the erase mode. It's a pretty cool feature, but it's also easy to do that by accident. And if you're thinking about Pencil primarily for the new scribble functions in iPadOS 14, you can just scribble through words to delete them. And incidentally, I've tested both pencils with Scribble and there's no difference between them for that particular use case. If you're an artist and you want to draw with your pencil, then you should probably consider one of the iPad Pro models, because these have the ProMotion display technology. Now, this allows the display to change its refresh rate depending on how you're using the tablet. The refresh rate, well, that's the amount of times that the content of the screen is redrawn every second. For the iPad Pro, it can go up to 120 Hz or 120 redraws per second. And this means that when you're using your pencil, there's less delay before what you're drawing appears on the screen. And less delay makes it feel more natural. That's not to say that there's a really noticeable delay when you're using the pencil on the 60 Hz screens. It's still a great experience. But if you're an artist or a serious designer, then you're probably going to want that extra responsiveness from the second generation pencil. Of course, bear in mind that the pencil is an optional extra and it's not a particularly cheap optional extra. Now, what if you want to use your iPad for photos and video? Again, all of them can take photos and video with varying degrees of quality. Best results come, unsurprisingly, from the Pro models, which feature both a wide-angle and an ultra-wide-angle lens. The iPad Air has got the same wide-angle lens as the Pro machines. And these three have got the power to record and edit 4K video at 60 frames per second. The standard iPad and the iPad mini have got a lower resolution 8 megapixel camera, which can't record 4K video. Now, what if you need to connect to external storage or cameras? Well, the iPad Air and the Pro models have got a USB-C connector, so you can plug your memory card reader or an external hard drive or even a camera straight into your iPad to copy files across. I like to take my iPad Pro with me when I travel, well, back in the days when we could travel freely, so that I could pull images straight in and then edit them on the iPad with the pencil. And it's a really useful feature that opens up the possibilities for the iPad to be more of a replacement for your laptop or your desktop computer. This doesn't mean that you can't connect devices to the standard iPad and the iPad mini, but since these have got the Lightning connector, you need to buy a separate USB adapter, and it will be quite a bit slower. Now, we'd all love to have an unlimited budget, but reality is that's not the case, so perhaps you need to buy the cheapest possible iPad. Well, I always say just get the best one that you can comfortably afford. The cheapest in the range is, of course, the standard iPad, and if that's the one you can afford, go for that one. There's no need to feel like a poor cousin if you buy the standard iPad. It's a fantastic tablet and it represents fantastic value for money. Certainly, thinking about it, there's no other tablet or computer that you could buy for the same price that offers the same level of quality and performance. Something else to bear in mind is that you get the same great iPad experience, whichever one you choose to buy. But what if budget is tight and you don't want the cheapest iPad, you want the enhanced features of the expensive models? Well, fortunately, Apple users tend to upgrade frequently. I'm no exception here. And so there is a healthy used market where you could snag a bargain. And I think the best value to have on the used market is the iPad Pro, specifically the second generation iPad Pro, like I have here. It's almost identical to the current third generation model. It doesn't have that extra ultra-wide camera lens, it doesn't have LiDAR, but otherwise it's identical in appearance. It features the A12X chip, which is very similar to the A12Z or Z in performance. Now sure, the newer chip is marginally faster, but in real-world usage, you're not going to notice that difference. And also because iPad Pro is expensive, they tend to get looked after. So a used purchase really can make a lot of sense here. Let's do one more. What if appearance is everything to you and you want a choice of colours? Well, across the range you get the silver and space grey finishes. But the standard iPad and the mini are also available in gold. Now just to be clear, it's not the same shade of gold that Apple used to offer. It's got a hint of rose to it, so I'd suggest that you make sure you look at one in the shop first to check the colour works for you before buying. But the new iPad Air is available both in those standard silver and space grey, but it adds 3 new finishes. Rose gold, green and sky blue. So if colour choice is important to you, the iPad Air may be the way to go. But do bear in mind that once you put a case on, which you will because you'll want to protect your investment, you don't get to see much of that lovely colour. Now we haven't yet spoken about storage capacity, but this is really linked to the price. In fact, the only difference in options for each model is the storage. Now again, if you're new to iPad, don't get overly hung up on the specs and the amounts of RAM or memory. Apple balances the components for each model of iPad so that they deliver a consistent experience across the range. So let's put up the specs along with the storage options and the prices for both the USA and the UK. And what you'll notice is that as you increase your storage on one of the lower models, it gets closer to the entry price of the next model. So you really do need to look carefully at your storage requirements to ensure that you're getting the best model to suit your needs. So feel free to pause the video at this point if you want to spend some time analysing the graphic. And I have put chapter markers on the video so you can always come back and check again if you need to. And remember that the prices that are on display here are for the Wi-Fi only models. So let's just change the card now to show prices for these cellular models. With these you can pop a SIM card into your iPad and then use a mobile data plan with it. Personally, I just tether my phone when I need data on the go, and I've got a plan with my provider that allows me to do that, but that may not be an option for you. And perhaps you want a cellular iPad, so if so, it's also worth checking with your cellular provider, as they may offer the iPad that you want on a monthly plan. And so there we have it. I hope the approach was useful to you. It seems to me that the sweet spot in the range at the moment is that new iPad Air that comes out in October. It's got lots of the best bits of the Pro models with loads of choice in colours and that fast new A14 Bionic chip at what I think is a fair price point. If you're hoping for a technical deep dive in this video, well, I may do that separately, but I wanted to keep this particular episode as accessible and non-techy as possible. But if you did enjoy this content, there's lots more to come. I do need your support though. I'm only a small creator. All it takes though is just one click of that subscribe button. And if you're already subscribed to the channel, thank you very much. You can also support the channel by using the Amazon links in the description. You don't need to buy the items that I've linked to, but if you're planning to do some shopping anyway and you go to Amazon via the link in the description, then the channel gets a small commission. I know lots of you have done that, and I do thank you very much. It's really appreciated. As always, please leave a comment. I love talking to you guys in the comments section, and I hope I did enough to earn a thumbs up or a thumbs down if you're so inclined. But in any case, see you next time for some more geekery.